So thank you very much for having me here. I'm really excited to get to be part of this. And what I want to say is, being given 10 to 15 minutes, this will be a very high-level overview. And most of what I want to accomplish is to let you all know some of what we are doing at NRCS so that as you all are doing really important work on this topic, you can get back to us and make sure to share your findings with us, make sure to share your questions, make sure to share your concerns, ideas about what NRCS should be doing in terms of soil health and manure management. So I just want to be making sure that everybody knows that that is one of the goals. So I'm going to put it into context a bit first and say that soil health is one of those things that's really kind of inspired people across the nation at this point. And part of that is because it's such an amazing return on our nation's soil health investment as we go into this round. We really are looking at the potential to change the face of agriculture across the nation. Why is that? Well, basically because soil health, unlike many other topics, is where a lot of organizations across the board come together because really everybody can see benefits from it. Whether we're talking about better water infiltration and storage, reducing runoff and erosion and flooding, whether we're talking about increasing soil organic matter, saving energy, nutrient cycling and pest suppression benefits, resilience in our system as we experience those extreme weather events that every farmer is familiar with, increasing biodiversity, increasing the groundwater available to our agriculture and our population in general, clean water, clean air, long-term economic viability on the farm, really sustained, reliable productivity as we try to feed those 9 billion we're headed towards. Those are all exciting possible things that we can accomplish through managing for soil health, and that's why this has really inspired people across the nation. Now, what does NRCS have to do with soil health? Well, in a way, we've done soil health ever since the creation of the agency, but there's definitely been some new ways that NRCS has taken this on over the last years. We went from soil conservation and mainly being about reducing and preventing erosion to really a raised awareness that biology is what drives the system and that managing for the biological aspects of the soil is how we're going to make a lot of headway. So as we've raised awareness through our campaign across the nation, we've put out profiles on soil health, videos, etc. on our website. It's been mostly a media and awareness campaign in the past. We're really headed for a much expanded demand to the agency and also just soil health being promoted everywhere. And with that, interestingly, have come a lot of really good questions and a lot of really good discussions. And one of the things that became really clear to the agency is that we really didn't have the capacity to meet the scientific and technical demand with who we had in place right now. And so at the end of 2014, the Soil Health Division was established. That's when I was hired. And I've spent a bit of time over the last couple of years hiring a staff across the country, and I'm very excited to say that we have all of our specialists on board at this time. So that's really exciting. This is what that map looks like. You'll see a link at the bottom here that will take you to all of our contact information. And really the division is set up to be that grassroots link to national headquarters. And I want you all to know that no matter where you are in the United States, there's sort of a go-to person that is mostly in charge of connecting with people in your particular state, and then really the entire division to some extent works at the national level. And so feel free to contact any of us depending on who you may know, what the expertise may be. We're there and we want to be in contact and leveraging the resources that are out there and working with you all. So what do we do? Just a really broad overview. We were put in place to assess what some of the needs are out there, to build and coordinate partnerships, and to develop and carry out strategies across the agency, everything from training and building NRCS technical capacity to meet that increased demand in soil health, national and regional agency and partner coordination, bridging to external partners for technology acquisition, because we don't do research ourselves, well, a little bit, mostly in soil survey, but we as an agency don't have research authority, but we very much want to work with everybody out there who does the research so that we can make sure that the gaps that we have in terms of our agency services can be filled with the newest up-to-date research. We want to better integrate soil health into standards, agency policy, tools, and programs. So any of you that have experience working with NRCS and have ideas, we're always ears. We want to know what your ideas are. I think the more the merrier. There's room for everybody in the soil health movement. and we want to tap into the resources and the creativity that's out there. One of the pieces that I'll specifically talk a bit about is soil health assessment standards, interpretation guidance, and tools, mostly from the point of saying it's something that we're working towards, that we need input on, and we will be compiling and broadly leveraging localized soil health management systems innovation. So what does all this mean with respect to manure? Well, soil health has been defined as the continued capacity of the soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. And as such, manure can be one critical part of a soil health management system that produces more resilient, more productive soils. The NRCS has put together a set of 4 soil health management principles. Those are basically to minimize disturbance, maximize soil cover, maximize diversity, and provide continuous living roots. And we really would argue that, for one, these 4 principles apply everywhere. The complicated part is in how it is that you actually apply them, depending on what your production system is, what your climate, what your soils are, what the producer's limitations are, etc. But these principles should be able to be applied, and we need to help our producers get there in a way that is effective, efficient, and economically viable for them. The other thing I want to say, manure, where does that fit in? That's been a question that's definitely come to us, and we would say mostly it fits into this maximized diversity angle. Whether we're talking about integrating livestock as one of the diverse pieces of that soil health management system, whether we're talking about adding inoculants, of which manure can be one, adding manure as an organic amendment, those kinds of things. This is really kind of where that fits into the system. And it's very important to kind of look at that whole system and figure out how to integrate manure in order to achieve those full benefits. From the angle of maximizing diversity, what are some of the impacts of manure? Well, we can stimulate microbial diversity, abundance, various services we get from them. It can help break disease cycles through that stimulation, increase organic matter, increase aggregation, nutrient cycling, enhancing plant growth, increasing predator and pollinator populations when it's integrated appropriately with the whole rest of the system. As we build up our soil organic matter and aggregates, of course, we get better water dynamics, we get better water storage, we get better water access to plants, better ability of the soil to be resilient when there are those really extreme rainstorms that come through. Soil is less likely to erode. We're less likely to have runoff of those excess nutrients. Hopefully we're managing to not have excess nutrients, but when we have our soil covered and good infiltration, we're less likely to have those impacts. And of course, over on this side here, minimizing disturbance, maximizing cover, that allows us to buffer temperature, especially for those climates where we really get very low and very high temperatures. And that again helps in terms of manure being able to provide these benefits over on the left side. Now some cautions, obviously, that everybody here is aware of. Nutrient excess is a big deal with manure. Compaction can be a big deal. Water and air quality concerns. And just as a very broad overview, these are some of the things we have to be aware of, because these can be detriments to soil health if manure is not properly managed. Now, when we look at the literature, this was a very quick glimpse, a little bit of time searching for the literature online and pulling them into a table. There's lots more out there. This is by no means anything but a quick glimpse. But when we look at papers that are out there and what kinds of indicators of soil health they measure and whether those indicators are influenced by manure additions, basically the answer is yes. And I think we kind of know that, but from increasing organic matter and aggregate stability to decreasing bulk density to increasing active carbon, soluble nitrogen, potentially mineralizable nitrogen, microbial biomass, various enzyme activities, various measures of system diversity and functionality, we see that manure can have these beneficial impacts when it has been applied for long enough, when it has been enough carbon material. You'll see this one paper here where basically there was no impact, whereas most other papers there was a positive impact, or in this case there was a significant influence, and we're still figuring out to some extent what these measures mean. This was the only one that was liquid manure additions, whereas all the other ones were more solid manure, even manure with other carbon compounds added to them. So those are just in a brief nutshell what we see out there. Now, the trouble is that most of the assessments that are used by researchers are not available to producers, and so that makes it very hard for producers to see whether their manure additions are having these kinds of beneficial impacts. One of the things I've been arguing for years is that, we really need to move beyond just standard soil nutrient testing that is arguably the foundation to our agricultural success. It has helped us identify nutrient deficiencies and excesses, and therefore has allowed us to explicitly manage. If we have low phosphorus, you add more phosphorus. If we have low potassium, you add more potassium. Well, that's what we need to do with our biological and physical functioning of that soil. That capacity of the soil to function goes far beyond whether it's able to provide nutrients in a given year. And so that is the part where we need to really identify whether there are constraints. Are our aggregates falling apart? Is the soil too compacted? Is our microbial diversity not high enough, not abundant enough? Are we getting the kinds of benefits in terms of nitrogen cycling, phosphorus cycling, et cetera, that we should be getting? And so I argue, soil testing really should mean soil health testing. I'd love to see us go to a place where the standard conventional soil test that a producer has access to is some kind of a comprehensive assessment of what their soil health status is. But the methods that are out there are kind of all across the board, all over the place. There's very little standardization in sampling, in laboratory methods, in interpretations, in what's measured in different regions. And because of that, it's been hard to make interpretations of the numbers that are out there. So those folks who do have access to some of these assessments, there's more interpretation available in some regions than in others, but by and large, folks are still really looking to get more information on that. So what we'd love to do is to go from our soil quality assessments that were mostly research-based of the 1990s to soil health assessments that are standardized and that are available to producers. And we fully recognize that we're not going to do this perfectly right away. There's a lot of discussion out there. There are definitely a lot of agreements and a lot of disagreements about what we should be measuring, how we should be interpreting that, whether things are interpretable. And so we're going to have those discussions. Those are going to continue. But right now, we really have a need to determine what's the current best available science on this. Can we decide on some indicators and on some methods that will give us an idea of how our soil is functioning with respect to water partitioning, with respect to carbon mineralization, metabolic activities, bioavailable carbon, bioavailable nitrogen, microbial community structure and diversity. We really need to understand that better, and there are some tools out there that with a bit of standardization and addressing some gaps, we think that there's really some headway that can be made there. We did some pilot work in New Hampshire several years ago where we basically used one of the assessments that was available out there and took the approach of, okay, an indicator tells us something about soil process functioning. We need to then interpret based on soil and climate what that indicator is telling us. Is there a constraint? Is it optimally functioning? And then you can use that for management planning as part of the conservation planning process and help a producer get to much more data-informed implementation. So for example, if you have low aggregate stability, you might in the short term incorporate some fresh organic materials, but in the longer term, you might reduce your tillage and you might change your crop rotation, add surface mulches and those kinds of things. And several of the NRCS practice standards can then basically be used to address those kinds of suggested management practices. So that was a pilot. There's a long ways that we can go with that. And the agency is at this point working on strengthening the science of soil health sort of nationally. We're working on really kind of compiling and documenting the existing literature on indicators and their interpretation so that we can at least come up with nationally some preliminary standards and hopefully some preliminary interpretations. They will not be perfect, and I'll be the first to acknowledge that, but hopefully they'll get us in the right direction so that we can start using some of these assessments and really kind of know where are they at, what can we say, what can't we say so far, and communicate that carefully. We really want to leverage existing projects out there. So if you are working on soil health, you're measuring various of these indicators, one of the things we're hoping to do is to build a citizen science network where really folks can contribute their data, whether they're producers, whether they're researchers. We're hoping to build soil health data into the NRCS soil databases so that eventually the soil survey will not just tell you what your soil type is and what that looks like in terms of inherent properties, but that soil type will also come with information about, for example, in the soil type, we might have a range of 20 to 50% aggregate stability, and here's your medium, and that means if you are at 70%, you're way above average, and you're doing really well. If you're at 10%, then gosh, you really, for the soil type, have a long ways to go. So we hope to be able to get to where we can provide that kind of interpretive information, and again, pending funding, we'll see how fast we can drive that in that direction, but there's certainly a lot of information already available out there that can be used toward that effort. We're really hoping to put together a monitoring network where we can look at some representative benchmark soils and more rigorously evaluate management impact in collaboration with all of our research partners out there. So stay tuned on that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of opportunity for those folks who are really working in Manure to make sure that those data that you are accumulating become part of this kind of a network and help everybody out there who's looking for that information. So in closing, I want to bring this up just to put it back in perspective. We're really looking to drive regenerative soil health management systems adoption so that we get that win-win. We're really hoping that these kinds of systems become commonplace on America's working lands, and there's really a very nice upward spiral of building better soil health that we can drive through all of the work that everybody is doing out there. So we hope to collaborate. I'd love to take questions on this if I have time, and I'd love for anybody to contact me or any of the other folks in our division so that we can get your feedback, get your interest, share data where that's possible, and just be in contact and work on this together. Thank you very much.